What's up, guys? CieZ here. I'm going to be watching a replay of DaDokisinX, who's a very good player, versus Warboss. I haven't really heard much of Warboss, but I heard this was a good replay. And what I wanted to do during this replay is actually answer a question that I've been asked a lot on my stream, and that's, how do I get better at CoH? What can I do to improve my play? And so I figured, making a video would be easier to put all of my thoughts into one place, rather than trying to answer it, in the middle of a game, because it could be, a pretty lengthy answer. I'll try to keep it as short and sweet as possible in this video, and basically expand upon, the specifics of what I say in this video in some future videos. So, the first thing you need when you're trying to get better at any game, really, but CoH especially because it is an RTS game, is the right mindset. The first part of that, just admit that you need, want, and can get better at the game. The good news is, if you're watching this video, you probably already realize this. But everybody, even the top players, can always get better. And so acknowledging that fact is a very important first step. Secondly, you have to learn to love your losses. This is probably one of the hardest facets of getting better at, especially RTS games. Every loss is a learning experience. When you win a game, you don't usually learn what you did wrong because you won. But when you lose, you can generally go back in the replay, if you don't already know what you did wrong, and figure out where you can improve and how you can get better. So you have to learn to love your losses. I mean, they're not fun, nobody likes to lose, but they're the best learning experience in any RTS. Alright, so in learning from your losses, you definitely have to study them, but also you should study replays of top players. CoH.org has a great replay system where you can upload a replay. Anybody can upload replays, and the system automatically parses who's playing, and on the map and all this stuff. So just check out the leaderboard and see if you can find some replays from top guys. Jesulin, omgpop, DaDokisin, Vindicare. Twister, although Twister doesn't upload as many replays as I wish he would, because Twister is really good. Barton, all these guys you see playing in the tournaments. Check out the replays and, study what they're doing. The most important part of this, though, is you need to know why they're making the decisions that they're making. Imitating their strats can only get you so far, but once you can kind of learn why they're making the decisions they're making, you can start making those calls on the fly, whereas, which lets you unlock the potential that just memorizing build orders might not give you. And finally, you just have to play a lot. I mean, you cannot get better at the game without playing it. That's as simple as that. But when you're playing, you don't want to be like in zombie mode, as I call it. You always want to be, paying attention and figuring out what can you do better. Just going through the motions, it'll slowly improve you, but you'll improve a lot quicker if you focus on specific areas of the game. Now, anyone that's played an instrument or probably a sport can attest to that you spend a lot of time, doing the little things. In soccer, you spend a lot of time practicing passing, practicing throw-ins, practicing corner kicks. Just all of the little detailed mechanics. For instruments, you practice your chords, your arpeggios, your scales, because those are the building blocks of your form of art or your sport. In this case, practicing your mechanics will improve all aspects of your play. So, I'll just go over quickly what I consider to be the most important mechanics in CoH, and this applies to a lot of RTSs, really. And then, like I said, in future videos, if people want, I can go a lot more in-depth on what, specifically each of those mechanics is and how you can get better at it. I wanted to keep this video relatively short since my other two had been pretty long. So first of all, I think the most important thing is squad preservation, at least in terms of the mechanics of CoH. Veterancy is just so important as, the game gets into the mid and late game. And it's even more important now because of the inclusion of Ober command that has 5 levels of vet. If you're trying to fight vet 5 guys with vet 1 or vet 0 guys, you're just going to get completely out-muscled. Whereas vet 3 against vet 5, it's still in the favor of the vet 5, but not nearly as much as, if you didn't have veterancy. So, how do you get better at squad preservation? The first thing you can do, if you're simply trying to improve your squad preservation, just build less units. You know, a lot of times building an extra unit that you aren't going to be able to focus on and losing that unit will hurt you more than just floating a little bit of, you know, manpower until you feel comfortable actually building a new unit. The other thing that's helped me is the tactical map. So in the tactical map, you know, you can see every engagement that's going on, you know, simultaneously, and you can get a general idea of how that engagement is going. And you can also retreat from the tactical map. So, you know, if you see that this squad right here is in a bad position, which it is, well, it was until that grenade was thrown, you can just select it, hit your retreat button, and it goes home, which is a lot quicker than having to actually move the camera to that fight and realize, hey, that's going poorly, because, you know, there's a fight going on here as well. There's a fight going on here as well. If you have the tactical map up, you can see all of that at the same time. Now, numpad 0 is the default hotkey for the tactical map, and that's a pretty terrible hotkey, because you always want your left hand, you know, on the left-hand side of the keyboard, and you always want your right hand on the mouse, because, you know, you need to be using hotkeys with your left hand, you need to be clicking stuff with your mouse. I have a mouse that has side buttons. Most of them these days are pretty cheap, and most mice I should say, that you buy with side buttons have the ability to reprogram those buttons into, you know, mimicking a keystroke. In my case, one of my right mouse buttons just mimics numpad 0, which lets me, you know, quickly pull up the tactical map, zoom around the map. You know, you can double click anywhere, zoom around, and you know, I didn't used to do this, but I've really found that it does help my squad preservation ever since I got used to it. If you don't have a mouse that has side buttons, you can get a really simple auto hotkey script to actually rebind it to a keystroke, like maybe G. You know, I don't think G is a hotkey for anything in the game, and it's, you know, in a pretty central location on your keyboard. But whatever is comfortable for you works. If you know, you can Google that, maybe make a post on CoH.org, and you should be able to figure out, you know, how to get a simple auto hotkey script to do that for you. So, once you get your squad preservation under control, another really important facet of CoH is map control. Map control in this game equals resources, and resources in the RTS are always extremely important. So what I mean by map control is you want to have a good cap order early game. You know, you want to either plan on securing your side and then kind of hunkering down, and you'll see that Warboss is doing a pretty good job of that in this. You know, he has almost his whole side of the map, but most importantly, he has his fuel. And you can see that he's bunkered down in that area to make sure that Dadokisin has a hard time pushing it. Or you can choose to play, you know, aggressively. If they're the US or the Soviet, you're going to want to play aggressively. So you want to know which points on each map are cutoffs, and that way you can constantly harass your opponent's economy by cutting him off. And so, you know, knowing your map sectors, map layouts, really important. Knowing how and when to cut off your opponent is really important as well. And that's what I mean by map control. Now, the next two things kind of go hand in hand. They're existent in every RTS. There's micro and macro. So micro is things like putting your squads always in green cover, you know, making sure your tanks do not get hit by AT grenades, positioning your MGs and your AT guns and your support weapons in good spots so that they are always, you know, of the most use. Like this right here would be an example of poor micro, because all of his dudes are just kind of sitting out in the middle of the open. It doesn't really matter in this case because there's not much firepower coming at him. But if there had been more units, you know, and even that Volk, you know, pretty much pushed those two rifles off. If there had been even more firepower there, that engagement could have gone even worse. So you always want to make sure you're getting the most value out of all your units. That's basically the definition of micro. The most value out of your units. Macro means you want to be spending your resources in a timely manner, but more than that, you want to make sure you're spending your resources wisely. You know, it's one thing to just spam out units and never be floating resources, but that's not going to win you games. Getting the right units at the right times is going to be, you know, it's going to win you the games. So, you know, you never want to be floating 1,000 manpower unless you're pop capped or you have an actual reason to. But by the same token, you want to be making sure that you're always purchasing useful units. That's equally as important. Now next, and this will be the last thing I'll talk about in this video, is build order. You need a solid build order. You want to go into each game on each map with a pretty clear overall objective of what you want to do. You don't want to have the first 25 minutes mapped out, because you're going to have to react to your opponent. But you probably want the first 5, 6, or 7 minutes more or less mapped out. For example, you might want to get 3 Volks and then some MGs out. Or you might want to get, 3 rifles and your lieutenant out. And just, having those tight-knit build orders helps you control the map early. It lets you know how you're going to have to micro, because you'll have a general playstyle in mind. But you do need to be flexible. Flexibility is more important than having the most perfect build order. I would focus on build orders and timings, to a lesser extent than these other things, because even the best build order in the world will not save you from poor mechanics. If you're not spending your resources, if you're not microing your units and you're losing them, if you're not controlling the map, it doesn't matter that you have the most perfect build in the game. And now, one last facet of build orders is basically knowing timings. You want to know at what time in the game a unit can and would hit the field. A quick example of this is, you can generally know that if a Soviet player is going to be going tier 3 for an T-70, they will have it at earliest like 8:45 in this current patch, but more likely around 9:30 to 10 minutes. So, if you suspect that they're going to get a quick T-70, you want to keep an eye on the in-game clock so that you know at what point you need that AT. Because if you have no AT when the T-70 hits the field, you're going to be in a really bad spot. And you can also know that, oh, hey, if it's 14 or 15 minutes in, and the T-70 shows up, that it's either a really late T-70 for some reason. I don't know why you'd get that late of a T-70 in most games. But if you don't see the T-70, you'll know that it's probably not coming. And you also just want to be aware of when your own units can hit the field. So, the T-70 might come at 10 minutes, but your P4 can probably come, around, 12, 13 minutes. That's just something that you'll pick up from studying replays and from playing a lot. You could even take a little notebook. A lot of players in other RTS games, the players that get paid to play these games, they'll actually have notebooks sitting next to them where they've written down build orders and timings and all of these sorts of things, because it's really difficult to remember how many units can come out at what time, 20, 30, 40 units on different maps and different cap orders, and it's pretty much impossible to memorize it all. But if you glance at a notebook, it might be pretty easy. Anyways, that's going to be it for this video. If you guys are really interested in the replay, then I can probably put in the comments or something else. I'll go ahead and turn off the recording and probably finish it off myself. But I covered all the things I wanted to cover. Now, if there's a specific point that I mentioned that you'd like me to cover in the next video, just leave it in the comments. I really do appreciate everyone that watches the videos. It's been pretty fun and interesting for me to make them. It's definitely kind of a new adventure for me, so to speak. And if you haven't already, please check out my guide. I made a U.S. Forces guide that is a Captain First build. It's kind of to get away from all the M15 AA half-track stuff. And I've also made an Oberkommand build that's designed to counter all the M15 AA half-track stuff. And those are on my YouTube channel, and just let me know what you think about those as well. But I'm going for now, guys. Thanks. Have a good night.